Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The heavy mahogany door slammed open with enough force to rattle the crystal chandelier, the sound cracking through the silence of the penthouse like a gunshot. Caspian Blackwood didn't just walk into a room. He invaded it, his presence a dark, suffocating storm of pheromones and fury. He marched across the Persian rug, his bespoke Italian suit jacket flaring behind him, closing the distance to the fragile figure sitting by the window in 3 long predatory strides. He slammed a thick manila envelope onto the glass coffee table, the impact sending a delicate teacup shivering against its saucer. "Is this your idea of a joke, Julian?" Caspian's voice was a low growl, vibrating with a dangerous, lethal calm that was far more terrifying than a shout. "Divorce? After 3 years of silence, you think you can just sign a piece of paper and walk out of the Blackwood empire?" Julian Vane did not flinch. He sat in the high-backed velvet armchair, his frame swallowed by the fabric, looking out at the rain-streaked skyline of the city that never slept. He was pale, too pale, like translucent bone china that might shatter if handled too roughly. He slowly turned his head, his hazel eyes dull and sunken, lacking the spark of defiance that had once intrigued and infuriated Caspian. "It is not a joke, Caspian," Julian whispered, his voice raspy, as if he had swallowed broken glass. "It is a resignation." "A resignation?" Caspian laughed, a cold, sharp sound. He loomed over the smaller man, placing a hand on either arm of the chair, trapping Julian in a cage of expensive wool and rage. "You don't get to resign from a merger, Julian. Your father sold you to me to save his failing shipping lines. You are an asset, and assets don't file for divorce." Julian's gaze dropped to Caspian's hands. Strong, large hands that had never once held him with affection, only possession. "The merger is secure. Your stocks are at an all-time high. You have what you wanted." "And what about what you wanted?" Caspian sneered, leaning in closer, his mint and tobacco scent overwhelming Julian's senses. "You wanted the prestige. You wanted the Blackwood name. You played the perfect, silent, obedient doll for 3 years. Why the sudden rebellion? Is there someone else?" A sudden, violent cough ripped through Julian's chest before he could answer. He brought a handkerchief to his lips, his shoulders heaving with the effort to suppress the spasm. Sounded wet, deep, and agonizing. Caspian pulled back slightly, his lip curling in distaste. "Stop the theatrics. You've been sick for months. If you think playing the victim will get you a better settlement, just sign the papers, Caspian," Julian gasped, wiping his mouth quickly, balling the white cloth into his fist to hide the bright crimson stains spreading within it. "Please, just let me go." "Never." Caspian straightened up, adjusting his cuffs with icy precision. "You are a Blackwood until I say you aren't. I have a gala to attend tonight. You will be there, standing by my side, looking perfect. Do not test me, Julian." Caspian turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving the divorce papers untouched on the table. He didn't see the way Julian slumped forward the moment the door clicked shut. He didn't see the handkerchief unfold, revealing a horror of fresh blood and necrotic tissue. And he certainly didn't look inside the envelope he had thrown down, past the divorce decree to the second document clipped to the back. The drive to Blackwood Tower was a blur of neon lights and irritation. Caspian sat in the back of his limousine, scrolling through market reports, but the words wouldn't stick. Julian's face kept intruding on his thoughts. The hollowness of his cheeks, the way his wrist had looked like a twig when it rested on the armrest. Why now? For 3 years their marriage had been a cold war, a transactional arrangement. Caspian had been convinced from day one that Julian was a spy, a plant sent by the Vane family to leak corporate secrets. It was the only logical explanation for why the Vane patriarch had been so eager to marry off his only son. So Caspian had built a wall of ice. He provided Julian with a limitless credit card, a luxury penthouse, and absolute neglect. No intimacy, no conversation, just a cold, silent roommate who occasionally attended events as arm candy. Caspian checked his watch. He had left the penthouse in such a fury, he hadn't even changed for the gala. He needed the files he'd left on his desk at home. Cursing, he tapped the partition. Turn around. I forgot something. When he re-entered the penthouse 30 minutes later, the silence was different. It wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, oppressive. Julian? He called out, mostly out of habit. No answer. He walked into the living room. The divorce papers were still on the table. Julian was gone, probably hiding in the bedroom, sulking. Caspian reached for the envelope, intending to shred the ridiculous divorce petition and be done with it. He grabbed the papers, ripping them out of the sheath. Asterisk petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner, Julian Vane Blackwood. Asterisk, he scoffed, flipping the page. Then he froze. Behind the legal jargon of the divorce filing was a document with the header of St. Jude's Research Hospital. It was marked with a red stamp, confidential/urgent. Patient name asterisk Julian Vane. Diagnosis asterisk idiopathic cardiac atrophy. Prognosis asterisk terminal. Estimated life expectancy asterisk 3 to 4 months from date of assessment. The world stopped. The ambient hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the beat of his own heart. It all vanished into a vacuum of ringing silence. Caspian read the line again. Idiopathic cardiac atrophy. It was a rare, wasting disease where the heart muscle slowly turned to stone, weakening until it could no longer pump. It was painful. It was suffocating. And it was caused by extreme, prolonged emotional distress. His eyes scanned down to the doctor's notes, scrawled in hasty handwriting at the bottom. Asterisk patient has refused palliative care. Patient has refused experimental surgery, citing lack of reason to endure recovery. Patient requests DNR. Asterisk, lack of reason. Caspian whispered, the words tasting like ash. He looked at the date. 2 months ago. Julian had known he was dying for 2 months, and he hadn't said a word. He had just quietly prepared divorce papers so that Caspian wouldn't be burdened with a widower's status. A memory flashed in Caspian's mind 3 weeks ago. Julian had tried to come into his study, bringing a cup of tea. Asterisk, Caspian, can we talk? Asterisk, asterisk, I'm busy, Julian. Get out. Asterisk, asterisk, it's important. Asterisk, asterisk, unless you're dying, I don't care. Asterisk. Caspian dropped the papers. His hands, usually steady enough to sign billion-dollar mergers without a tremor, were shaking violently. He had said that. He had actually said those words to his dying husband. Julian! Caspian roared, the name tearing from his throat, raw and panicked. He sprinted toward the master bedroom. Empty. The bed was made perfectly, untouched. He ran to the guest room, the room Julian had moved into 6 months ago when Caspian had complained about his restless sleeping. He kicked the door open. The room smelled of antiseptic and iron. On the bedside table, there was a small array of pill bottles neatly lined up. But it was the bathroom that drew Caspian's horror. The light was on. Julian! Caspian burst into the ensuite. Julian was there. He was slumped against the marble vanity, sliding slowly toward the floor. His shirt was unbuttoned, revealing a chest that looked horrifyingly bruised, the telltale sign of the atrophy spreading. Blood was splattered on the white porcelain sink, a stark, violent contrast to the pristine luxury of the room. Julian's eyes were half closed, his breath coming in shallow, rattling hitches. He looked up, his vision unfocused, and a faint, delirious smile touched his blood-stained lips. You came back, Julian whispered, his voice barely audible over the rushing of blood in Caspian's ears. Julian, oh God! Caspian fell to his knees, disregarding his suit, disregarding the blood. He reached out, hovering, terrified to touch him, terrified that Julian would break apart. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide this? Julian's head lulled to the side, resting against the cold cabinet. You hate Weakness. I didn't want to annoy you. One last time. The sentence hit Caspian with the force of a physical blow. Tears, hot and unfamiliar, pricked at his eyes. Annoy me? You're dying, you idiot. You're dying. Divorce. Julian mumbled, his eyes rolling back, his consciousness slipping. Signed it yet? So you can be free. I don't want to be free, Caspian screamed, grabbing Julian's shoulders, pulling him into his chest. The body in his arms felt impossibly light, like a bird made of hollow bones. Stay with me. Do you hear me, Julian? That is an order. I am your alpha, and I am ordering you to stay awake. But for the first time in 3 years, Julian Vane did not obey. His head fell back, limp, his breath stopping for a terrifying second before hitching again. Weaker this time. Caspian fumbled for his phone, his blood-slicked fingers slipping on the screen. He dialed his private medical team, his voice cracking into a sob he couldn't recognize as his own. Get to the penthouse. Now. Cardiac failure. Bring everything. If he dies, I will burn this entire city to the ground. The waiting room of the private clinic was sterile, silent, and smelled of money and death. It had been 6 hours. Caspian sat on a leather bench, his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. His suit was ruined, stained with the blood of the man he had ignored for 1,000 days. Every minute that ticked by on the wall clock felt like a judgment. He replayed their marriage in his head, viewing it through a new, horrific lens. The first year, Julian waiting up for him every night with dinner, only for Caspian to text at 2 a.m. that he wasn't coming home. Julian eventually stopped waiting. The second year, Julian bringing him gifts, a watch, a tie, a rare book. Caspian putting them in a drawer, unopened. Asterisk. Stop trying to buy my affection, Julian. Your father already paid for the wedding. Asterisk. The third year, the silence. The coughing. The weight loss. Caspian had thought it was a diet. He had thought the pallor was Julian staying indoors too much. He had interpreted the withdrawal as Julian plotting something malicious. He thought I hated him, Caspian whispered to the empty room. Asterisk. He was right. I acted like I hated him. Asterisk. But he didn't. That was the twisted irony that was currently tearing his soul apart. He didn't hate Julian. He feared him. He feared the way Julian's quiet dignity made him feel guilty. He feared the way Julian's soft eyes made him want to forget the business war with the Vane family. He had pushed Julian away because he was terrified of falling in love with a liability. And in doing so, he had killed him. The stress-induced atrophy. He was the disease. The double doors swung open. The chief of surgery, Dr. Eris, stepped out, pulling off a surgical cap. He looked exhausted. Caspian was on his feet in an instant, crossing the room, grabbing the doctor by the lapels of his scrubs. Tell me, Mr. Blackwood, please, Dr. Eris said firmly, prying Caspian's hands off. He is alive. Caspian let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He's alive. Barely, Dr. Eris continued, his expression grave. We stabilized the immediate collapse. But his heart is, Mr. Blackwood, I have never seen atrophy this advanced in someone so young. The tissue is calcified. He needs a transplant or the experimental regenerative surgery we discussed in the file. Do it, Caspian said instantly. Whatever it costs. By the hospital if you have to. Save him. It's not about money, the doctor sighed. The experimental procedure uses a localized stem cell regeneration technique. It's incredibly painful during the recovery. And it requires the patient to want to survive. The will to live affects the autonomic nervous system's acceptance of the graft. Julian, when he woke up briefly during prep, he asked us to let him go. Caspian felt the floor sway beneath him. He asked to die? He said he was tired, Dr. Eris said softly. He believes he has nothing to wake up for. Unless you can give him a reason, the surgery will likely fail. His body will reject the new tissue because his mind has already quit. Caspian stared at the doctor, the weight of his sins crushing him. He had to be the reason. He had to become the reason Julian wanted to live, after spending 3 years being the reason Julian wanted to die. Let me see him. He is in the ICU. He is heavily sedated, but he can hear you. Caspian walked into the dim room. The machinery beeped in a rhythmic, taunting tempo. Julian lay amidst a web of tubes and wires, looking smaller than ever. An oxygen mask covered the lower half of his face. His skin was the color of snow. Caspian pulled a chair to the bedside. He took Julian's hand, the hand he had refused to hold at their wedding, and pressed it against his forehead. It was cold. "Julian," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I saw the papers. I saw the diagnosis." The eyelids fluttered. Julian didn't wake, but his heart rate monitor sped up slightly. "You are not allowed to leave me," Caspian said, the command weak, broken. "You don't get to divorce me, and you certainly don't get to die. We made a contract. Until death do us part. And I am not letting death have you yet." He kissed the knuckles, staining them with his tears. "I know I was cruel. I know I was a monster. I thought if I kept you at arm's length you couldn't hurt me. I thought you were your father's pawn." Caspian choked on a sob. "But you weren't playing a game, were you? You just existed. You just tried to be my husband, and I punished you for it." He leaned in closer to Julian's ear. "If you wake up, if you fight this, I will spend the rest of my life on my knees begging for your forgiveness. I will destroy the Vane Company if that's what it takes to prove I chose you, not the merger. I will burn the world down to keep you warm, Julian. Please, just don't leave me alone in the dark." A tear slipped from Caspian's eye and landed on Julian's cheek. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, Julian's finger twitched in Caspian's grip. The surgery took 14 hours. Caspian stood outside the operating theater the entire time, refusing food, refusing water, refusing to sit. He paced like a caged tiger, terrifying the nurses with his aura of pure, concentrated dread. When Dr. Eris emerged, he looked like he had gone 10 rounds with a boxer. He pulled down his mask. "Mr. Blackwood." Caspian stopped, his heart hammering against his ribs. "The graft held," Dr. Eris said, a small smile touching his lips. "It was touch and go. We lost him twice on the table. But he fought back. In the last critical moment, his vitals stabilized. He decided to stay." Caspian collapsed. The mighty CEO of Blackwood Industries, the alpha who made competitors tremble, sank to the cold linoleum floor and wept openly. 3 months later, the winter sun filtered through the glass walls of the conservatory, warming the plush daybed where Julian lay. He was still thin, still fragile, but the color had returned to his cheeks, a soft, healthy peach instead of the deathly gray. He was reading a book, a thick novel Caspian had hunted down from an antique dealer in London because Julian had mentioned it once, 2 years ago, in passing. The door opened, and Caspian entered. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a soft cashmere sweater and jeans, carrying a tray. "Time for your medicine," Caspian said softly, placing the tray on the side table. It held the pills, a glass of water, and a small plate of sliced pears, Julian's favorite. Julian marked his page and looked up. His eyes were clear now, though a shadow of sadness still lingered in them. Trust was not rebuilt in a day, nor in 3 months, but it was building brick by brick. "You're home early," Julian said. His voice was stronger, though still soft. "I delegated the afternoon meeting," Caspian said, sitting on the edge of the bed. He picked up a slice of pear and held it out. "Open." Julian hesitated, then parted his lips, allowing Caspian to feed him. It was a ritual they had developed, an act of service from the man who used to command the world, now serving the husband he had almost destroyed. "My father called," Julian said after he swallowed. "He wants to discuss the renewal of the shipping contracts." Caspian's eyes darkened, the old sharpness returning for a split second. "I told the security desk to block his number. You don't need to speak to him." "He's family, Caspian." He sold you, Caspian said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of Julian's jaw. He sold you to a man he knew was ruthless, and he didn't check on you for 3 years. He doesn't get access to you anymore. No one gets access to you unless you want them to. Julian looked at him, searching his face. And you? Do I want you? It was the question that hung between them every day. The divorce papers had been shredded, but the emotional signature was still there. Caspian flinched, the vulnerability raw in his eyes. He took Julian's hand, pressing it against his chest, right over his own beating heart. I hope so, Caspian whispered. I work for it every day. I will work for it until the day I die. You hold the leash now, Julian. You can kick me out. You can take half my fortune. You can leave. But please, don't. Julian looked at the powerful man humbled before him. He remembered the pain of the last 3 years, the cold nights, the silence. But he also remembered waking up in the ICU, the first thing he saw being Caspian's tear-streaked face, looking at him as if he were the most precious thing in the universe. Julian sighed, leaning his head slightly into Caspian's touch. I'm not going anywhere, Caspian. The doctor said I need to avoid stress. And divorcing you seems like a lot of paperwork. A laugh, startled and genuine, escaped Caspian. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against Julian's. I love you, he breathed, saying the words he should have said at the altar. I love you, Julian. I know, Julian whispered, closing his eyes. I'm starting to believe you. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with poison, but with the terrifying, fragile power of a second chance. If you enjoyed seeing Caspian grovel and beg for the forgiveness he didn't deserve, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Would you forgive a husband who ignored you for 3 years? Or would you have let the divorce papers stay signed? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.